Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 250 of Real Blend.
Wow!
A podcast that has a higher tomato meter score than Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh.
On this week's show, the Critics' Choice Super Awards
Quantumania
have announced our nominations, and I want to talk about them because I think some of them are in there that you guys are really going to like. Cocaine Bear arrives in theaters, and as a result of that, director Elizabeth Banks is going to be our guest later on in the show. Elizabeth Banks joining the show.
Hey!
Talk about Cocaine Bear. And of course, because of that, we're going to play hashtag Elizabeth Banks Blend late in the show. My name is Sean O'Connell. I'm the managing editor here at Cinema Blend, and I'm joined each week by Captain Hat, Jake Hamilton of Fox 32. What is it, pitchers and catchers? Is that why you're back on the Strohs bandwagon?
What bandwagon is there? I know you're not familiar with the concept of a local sports team that does well, but there is no bandwagon when your team is constantly World Series champions.
365 days out of the year.
Jake, the hat you're wearing, that's the cheating edition, right? The limited cheating edition.
Hey, if you guys can't beat us when we're cheaters and not cheaters, what does that say about you? We gave you guys multiple shots to try to beat us.
Hey,
actually, you did. Actually, you did. So I can't talk to you. You, Sean, not you. You, Sean.
I don't even have a team. What are you talking about? Charlotte doesn't have a team. We have a minor league team at best,
and they're doing their best.
Charlotte doesn't even have movie theaters. they have nothing going on there.
They've got Sean.
I basically
they've got a little Mount Rushmore, and it's 4 different faces of Sean.
Yeah, I legitimately have to drive to like Greensboro to see. Yeah.
Sean drives to Georgia to watch his movies. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C., who has such power that he tells people to book screenings at the theater closest to his house. That's the kind of power I need.
No, well, the theater that I usually go to is the theater that we did the book Q&A for Sean's book Q&A a couple weeks ago here in Tysons. It was fun. And thanks to all the Real Blend listeners who came out. I know we've done a show already since that signing, but I just wanted to say thank you to all the listeners we got to meet because I wasn't on the beginning of last week's show. So it was cool to meet everybody.
And Kev, I have told the guys, I received so many compliments for how well you did with the Q&A.
Well, thank you. My mom wrote all those questions. So I just wanted to, just thank her. Thank Jill.
Prepare for me to phone it in April.
Good. That's
Not planning on trying one bit.
Land that plane gently.
Yeah. Sean, you should come up with like generic answers for even if like the most hard hitting question, like you just switch the topic. By the way, this is totally random, but I over the weekend I finally sat down and watched Plane for the first time. You just mentioned Plane. That movie's awesome, and I want people to see it. If you haven't had a chance, it's on video on demand. We've already discussed it when it came out in theaters, but it is available in your home now. And it's just a 95-minute B action film that brought me. It is like 80s, 90s Commando, Rambo style. It is just, and Butler's awesome, man. So is Greenland.
Butler's always awesome.
Just wanted to say that. Yeah. I thought the movie was fun. So,
all right, if you're watching us on YouTube, hello, thank you very much for joining us. Maybe it's Friday. Maybe you're part of the notification crew and you are going down to the comments to let us know that you're here and where you're checking in from. I received a birthday message from, I want to say Slovenia.
Wow.
Slovenia.
Yeah. Wild. Someone who listens to us on the regular.
You know what's funny about Slovenia? I just ordered a typewriter because I'm going to respond to somebody with it. You guys know. Yeah. And I actually think it came from Slovenia. It was like I ordered it on Etsy and it came from Slovenia. I'm pretty sure it did. I need to double check the packaging. But yeah, anyways.
Maybe it's the guy who listens to us.
It's probably, yeah.
If you're listening on audio and you want to join the visual element of the show, head over to youtube.com/RealBlend Podcast. Of course, the show is available every Friday and sometimes on Wednesdays, all the different places that you get your podcast needs met. In addition,
do you think anyone ever like logs onto the visual element of YouTube and just goes like, "Ew, that's not what I expected"?
Well, I at least saw a comment one time where they were like, I had very clear pictures in my head of what you guys looked like after listening to the audio version for a long time. And then they watched the YouTube channel and it screwed them up completely.
I mean, that's, to be fair, do you remember, honestly, for me in the days before internet, whenever you would listen to like a local radio DJ for years, and then when you would like finally see a picture of them and you're like, oh, that's not what I expected. I guess, that's somewhat similar.
Yeah. I mean, people watch me on TV all the time. They'd say, I can't believe how ugly you are in person. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
Oh, dude, if it makes you feel better, I can't believe it.
No.
Hey, And if you want more of the show, more
right.
sick burns like that, sign up for Ropeland Premium, where we can drop a new show.
We actually do like each other.
On Mondays.
Do we?
You get an ad-free version of the show.
Do we?
An extra segment every week and a newsletter. This week is a newsletter week. So on Friday, while you're listening to this, you'll probably have one in your inbox. Check the description for information on where to sign up. Let's say hello to Gabe Kovach as well, too, who is hiding in the producer's chair. Hello, Gabe. How are you today?
Hi, boys. Well, happy 250. Happy 250.
Yes.
Happy 250.
What an accomplishment.
Yeah, Gabe, what did you get? What did you get us for this accomplishment? What gift did you get all three of us?
Me. I'm here.
He's editing this episode.
I showed up. Yeah.
All right, real quick. Kevin, favorite interview of the first 250 episodes?
Of our show?
Impossible.
No, the other another show. Any other show.
Any interview the last 4 years.
All right, I only slept 3 hours last night, so you're going to be getting a lot of randomness from me today. I mean, okay, no question. The 2.5 hour Quentin Tarantino interview we did in New York. Because...
Well, hang on. Before people go looking for a 2.5 hour interview, we did a 90-minute interview, but we were there for like an extra bit, right? It wasn't 2.5 hours.
I think the clip is 2.5 hours.
I'm pretty sure it is. Double check it. Either way,
the second includes the clip. If you're talking about the full video, the video includes us talking about it afterwards.
Okay, well, it was close to 2 hours or 2 hours, whatever it was. It was a very
2 hours might be right. Yeah.
I think we booked 90 minutes and we went longer. I remember. Okay. I'm almost certain that we stayed. Yes. I remember him getting up to go to the bathroom and he came back and we did the whole MPAA discussion about Kill Bill. So I'll keep this quick, but the reason why that was my favorite is like when I was, I've said this before, but when I was a kid, like I used to dream of just meeting him, just say like being in his presence, just to tell him how much his movies meant to me, let alone like ever have a sit down 4-minute junket interview with him, let alone have a 20-minute podcast interview with him, and then have him invite us to do a 92-minute or 2 hour interview where we could just literally ask him anything we wanted about his career and movies, stuff that I wanted to know since I was in high school. So yeah, no question. I mean, I literally can still see us sitting in that room. I remember where we were sitting. I remember who was sitting where. I remember Shannon McIntosh being there, who's an incredible producer. I remember looking over at her during the interview and looking at Quentin. It was just like, that interview is insane, man. It's look it up on YouTube or find wherever you get our podcast. It's volume 2 of our interviews with him. We've done 4, which is crazy.
If you're on the YouTube feed, just look in the corner. I'll drop a little link.
I do want to see how long that is while you guys are talking. Go ahead.
Jacob?
I think I'm going to go our interview with Tom Hanks in Memphis. Even though our most recent one from a few weeks ago was just wild and crazy. The reason I'm giving the edge, and honestly, like just on a personal level, I loved the second one with Tom Hanks just because of like the nature of what we were able to accomplish. It really felt much more casual and calm and earned in a way. But the reason that I'm going with the first one is all 4 of us got to be there together. All of us got to be in person with him. Yeah. And, one of the things we compared it to was like doing a great, James Lipton journey through all of his films. Like the boxes we were able to somehow check off in 25, 30 minutes was simply astounding. And the bonus of hearing through Tom's team and hearing through Warner Brothers and hearing through some of our friends that were there in Memphis at that time, that he was continuously talking about us and kept going on about how good of a time he had, and we heard it through his publicist, and it just, and the fact that like we were all able, one of my favorite things to do after a successful interview that we all care about when we're all together is just have a celebratory drink. And the fact that we are all able to do that together, it was the perfect combination of just one of the most incredible experiences of my life. So I'm giving Tom Hanks in Memphis.
And we said this before on the show, like if you go back and listen to that interview, because obviously we had him back on for A Man Called Otto, which I highly recommend you listen to, because that's the one we were scared about doing, because we were like, because the first one went so well, and we were like, how do we even top that? Because, and we said this before on the show, going into that first interview in Memphis, we did not plan on diving into any of those top topics, especially Saving Private Ryan, Forrest Gump, Philadelphia. All that stuff came up completely naturally. I said this before to you guys, and I remember I can see it in my mind when we left that table we were sitting at to prep, and we were walking through the Graceland room to get to where his room was. I literally remember standing behind you guys going, guys, I mean, we're about to have Tom Hanks on our podcast. Shouldn't we at least mention the opening of Saving Private Ryan? I literally remember saying that to you guys, and you were like, yeah, I know, but we already have our questions. We had them ordered out and everything, you know.
And not just that, but what's something you and I have always heard over the last 15 years, that he doesn't love doing retrospective look backs.
Right, because he wants to focus, and again, this is just from what we understand, he wants to focus more on the movie that he's promoting, which I understand completely, and he's already talked about all those classic movies at length, and I actually completely understand and respect that idea of things. But at the end of the day, when we started diving into that, I was like, this is why I'm here. This is what I want to be talking to this guy about. This is insane.
All right. Mine, even though we have so many to choose from, has to be Joaquin. Because
Joaquin Phoenix was on our show.
Shouldn't have gone that well. Yeah. Well, I mean,
anytime I hear someone say, dare I say, like they start a sentence with dare I say, I'm brought back to that room.
I will forever assssociate that phrase with Joaquin Phoenix.
I can 100%. See his face still in my mind. I literally can see the room we were in, the table set up, everything. But Sean, go ahead. I just remember, I'll never forget that when he turned his head.
His running joke of every question being the last one was hysterical. And for whatever reason, and this is a great example. This is what I love about when the three of us do interviews, of how we can pick up the baton that whoever we're interviewing is putting down. Like if it's Zimmer, and he's going to tell emotional stories, we're willing to let him go. But if it's Joaquin and he wants to be playful, we're able to pick that up and go with it as well too. But
same
then
thing
when
in our most recent
about,
Hanks interview, same exact thing. Like
100%.
That's exactly what happened. Like he was just
something
on point,
we're able to do.
To play. Yeah.
And when he started talking about how he wanted to be a fat Joker, because gaining weight is easier than losing it, because he'd done that before. His "fuck you, Phoenix" story.
That might be my favorite.
All of it's just great, and it's just you could legitimately tell he was having a good time. He notoriously hates interviews. And that one, when we went into it, I was worried. I was like, this isn't going to go well. And we were riding high on like a bunch of positive interviews, and we were like, oh, like kind of feeling our own shit, right? Like, oh, we can do anybody. And then they were like, okay, you get Joaquin Phoenix, and I was like, I was scared. Might be the one.
Oh, but then you're forgetting one of the best parts, which is him walking out the hallway and running into Todd Phillips.
Yes, and saying you should go do those guys. They're really great
because we weren't scheduled to get them. And then
and if you're just tuning into our show or you haven't heard that interview or heard the story, what we were referring to just now about the dare I say, literally the interview ended and Joaquin Phoenix gets up, and we all thought it went well because it went well considering like we knew he might be a tough interview, but like there was just a vibe that broke out at the initial stage of it with the last question bit that we all just kind of kept running with. But it was the turnaround to me was that he gets to the door and I'm trying to remember, he goes, dare I say that was, and then he like stops, pauses, and like he goes, fun
question mark
fun. Like he was like, I think he was shocked.
And didn't he talk about us in like an interview? Because there was some reference he made that Sean, you knew what he was talking about, and Kevin and I didn't. And he like talked about, I don't think he like name dropped us, but he said something in an interview months later about like pop culture references being for different generations or something. And he was like, oh, I was talking to these guys recently. And two of the younger guys didn't know what I was talking about, but the older guy did. But just what I take away from that. Yes,
Paul is dead.
Yeah,
that's right.
But what I took away from that is that like he remembered us and we registered in some form or fashion with a guy who notoriously hates doing these things.
All right. Well, our next guest is Elizabeth Banks, who obviously you guys know from several films over the years, whether it be the Hunger Games movies or the Pitch Perfect comedies. She is transitioning into the director's chair, having done Charlie's Angels, and now is taking on a wild new comedy called Cocaine Bear. And I was just thrilled we were able to get her. Like, I think she was a fun person who I knew was going to fit really well into the podcast. And she has a crazy movie to talk about. So without further ado, this is Elizabeth Banks joining the Real Blend podcast to talk about her new comedy, Cocaine Bear.
I just want to know if you can just break down a little bit about what was there for the actors in terms of the bear, in terms of like what they were seeing, what eye lines they were given. Did you have someone in a suit with was it motion capture, performance capture, like Andy Serkis style? But like kind of give an idea of like what that looked like for the actors.
So we had an incredible bear performer on set, and we cast that person just like you would cast any other actor in the movie. You know, we had to interview them, and we got resumes, and we talked to people who were too tall, and we talked to people who worked for ILM, and all these different various people. And Alan really came to the table. He was frankly the right size. So much of it is about like the size of the person. He's a stunt performer as well, which we really needed somebody that could interact with our actors. He knew how to walk as a quadruped on all fours using prosthetic arms so that he could mimic the bear's walk and gait and size. And he was fitted with a prosthetic head that came sort of attached to his neck and off of it, that had a bear snout and it had the eyeballs, so that he was the bear in our movie, right? Every actor that's in a scene with the bear interacted with Alan Henry, our bear performer. You ask about mocap. So mocap you would use if the bear were human, like Andy Serkis playing Caesar in The Apes, which was also done by Weta Workshop, who created our bear, who recommended Alan Henry to us in the beginning of this process. Alan is also from New Zealand. He was able to go into Weta Workshop and sort of mark out, his size and everything so that we had a good reference point for our bear. But that process of mocap, we didn't really use any of that because the bear is not human in any way, right? The bear, I don't need Alan's facial features. Like, he's never going to look like a person. He's never going to talk. So we didn't
James
really
Cameron
use any.
just shed a tear somewhere right now.
I know, sorry. And so that was what the actors had to deal with. They were able to be with Alan for everything. They did not have to interact with, balls on sticks, which I've had to work with. They didn't have to interact with, there was not a lot of green screen in the movie. We really shot it kind of old school CGI, which is you have all of the environments and you just put the one element in at the end.
Gotcha.
Awesome.
Elizabeth, I want to talk about editing specifically because so much of this material could either be treated for comedy or horror, and a lot of that can be decided at the last minute after you've got everything you wanted to shoot and how you wanted to put it together. When you were in the editing room, what were you thinking to try to hit that sweet spot between both of them?
I mean, tone was important just in the shoot too. I mean, the edit, yes, you can perfect things, but you have to have the raw materials in order to create tone. You have to have the crazy shots. You got to be bold. To me, one of the things I loved about this was how audacious it was. Mm-hmm. The audacity of the idea, the audacity of these characters. So I was constantly just like trying to upgrade the boldness of every moment, So for instance, in the visitor center, like how we were going to step through the motions of that, how the shot of Margot with the gun and the guy and the door and the bear, I saw that in my mind's eye. I knew what I wanted to come at camera. I knew how many times I wanted to use the device of things coming at camera. Yeah, You'll see in the movie, there's things going away from the camera, and then there's things coming right at you, like out into the audience. And I tried to use that really effectively to like truly put people almost in a ride, like a universal ride. You know what I mean? Like when you're in a roller coaster, I wanted it to feel viscerally chaotic because there's nothing more chaotic than a bear high on cocaine rampaging around. So how do we create that sense of chaos? You do it through multiple techniques, and a lot of it is camera work. Some of it is the actors, how they're interacting with it, how grounded they are or outraged or crazy. The speed at which things happen, how fast or slow, playing with the speed, that all of that came in. There was an interplay of many, many elements.
Gotcha.
Elizabeth, I'm a big fan of the series The Americans, obviously starring Carrie, but also starring Matthew Rhys, a great dramatic actor, an Emmy-winning dramatic actor. But walking away from this film, I just thought I need to see Matthew Rhys in like a screwball comedy. Like I laughed so hard at him in the scenes in the plane. How did you know to tap into this side of Matthew Rhys that, like, as a fan, I've never seen him do anything like that before?
Well, I am very lucky in that I've known Matthew Rhys for about 20 years. So I met him, one of the first people I ever met when I moved to LA and got into Hollywood. He was friends of a friend of a friend, and I went to dinner with him very early on. I knew he's been hilarious. He's a hilarious actor. I think he's so multifaceted. I got really lucky. He came with Carrie to Ireland. We'd cast Carrie in the movie, and he literally texted me after reading the script and asked if he could play Andrew Thornton. And he basically cast himself in the movie because I was like looking for somebody that we could bring to Ireland. I knew I wanted it to be a cameo. I wanted it to be a recognizable actor so that you really felt like in the opening sequence, oh, wow, this is a big actor. Like this guy's going to play a big role in the movie. Well, surprise, surprise, right? So I'm all constantly trying to surprise the audience. So we were looking at actors who were already shooting, for instance, in Ireland. There were a bunch of people over there making things. And so getting that text from Matthew, man, he instantly solved a big problem for me.
Wow. That's awesome. You know, I would imagine a lot of people are going to bring up Ray Liotta to you, but I was thinking about his filmography a lot recently in Copland and Goodfellas, and obviously the work he had done with James Mangold and Scorsese and all these incredible filmmakers. And so this, I believe, is his final film role, which is absolutely incredible to think about. I just wondered, you know, the idea of having him in this movie, what that means to you, and the idea. I read some story that he came to do ADR like right before he had passed. Can you talk about that? I mean, it's really emotional, very, very amazing though. He's great in the film.
He is great in the film. I worked with Ray on a little movie over a decade ago. I saw him come to set like consummate professional, you know, just amazing, like delivered a long monologue, like nailed it instantaneously. But he also was very charming, and he had a real kind of like mischievous glint in his eye. You know, I think that's what made him such an amazing Henry Hill, for instance, right? Is like, he's got a little bit of like a wild man in him, but he has a huge heart. He's just the sweetest guy. And so he came very joyfully to this process. He actually, after he read the script, we were on the phone, and he asked for more jokes. He was like, I feel like everybody's got really funny stuff to do. Like, I need some more funny stuff to do. And I just loved that he was game. You know, he was going to come. That's the tone I needed. Every actor that came had to be game. They had to kind of wink. You know, we had to understand, like, this movie's crazy. Just go with it. We're going to have a great time. That's kind of the energy inside of it. And he came joyfully to set to do some crazy stuff, you know, and put on that long-haired wig and, you know, the 70s clothes. And he just was fantastic. I mean, I'm so grateful to him. I'd been told very early on that, like, women don't direct a lot of action because frankly, this particular producer thought that men don't follow women, like that it's hard for women to lead men when it comes to like these real muscular actiony things. So the idea that Ray Liotta came to my set and happily was led by me, that I was able to direct like Henry Hill, I feel like I could do anything. Like blew that mythology totally open for me. And so I'm forever grateful for that because it gave me a lot of confidence.
Yeah, and the ADR must have been really special too, doing that, because like he's famous. The narration he did on Goodfellas is like the ultimate ADR. Like it was like the ultimate, like what that was. I would imagine those sessions were pretty special for you.
I was just happy he'd never seen The Bear, right? So like my actors were coming to ADR and they're like, oh my God, that's what it looks like. You know, they didn't know what The Bear was going to look like. All it was promises from me, you know? So finally they got to see like, okay, I had fulfilled my promise. The bear looks great. It looks like a totally real bear. That was really fun to see him see it and just be happy and impressed.
This concept that you women can't direct action is going to get blown to hell when people see your ambulance chase scene, which is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yes.
But specifically inside of that scene, I want you to talk about Margot Martindale, who just goes through a range of emotions throughout the course of this movie, from where she starts to where she ends up. Talk a bit about working with her and everything you're able to pull out of her.
So I worked with Margot Martindale on a television series called Mrs. America. The very first day that I went to that set was with her, and I revere her as an actor. You know, she's amazing. I'm a huge fan. And I was actually quite concerned that she was going to be really serious. And so, you know, I was like, I cannot mess about. I'm going to be totally prepared. I'm going to know all my lines. Like, I am not going to let Margot Martindale intimidate me. And then we got to set and she was like singing show tunes. And she was so funny and she was so delightful, and we just fell in like fast friends. Yeah. And when I read this script a couple years later, I immediately pictured her as Ranger Liz. And I don't think anyone else pictured a 70-year-old Margot Martindale as Ranger Liz, but man, I saw it. And I was very happy that the studio and my producing partners sort of all got behind the idea of Margot in that role, because man, does she deliver. She is so funny. I think she's a revelation. She was also really worried about doing the stunts. She's 70 years old, and she was like, what am I gonna do? How are you gonna make it look real? And man, it came together. It was a lot of me making promises that I had to hold up my end of, but she was very happy. And most importantly, she said after she saw it that she made herself laugh, which I love.
That's great. That's awesome.
Elizabeth, I'm about to strike a match and throw it on gasoline for a second, because you and I had a great debate earlier about who is the real villain of this film. Is it the bear, or is it the men who dropped the drugs? And the reason that I brought up that conversation is because these guys are two of my best friends on this planet. The most we've ever argued and yelled and screamed and clawed at each other is the shark Jaws, who's the villain debate. And I now find myself, I was really hoping that you would split the difference, but I found myself outnumbered because you told me you believe the shark is, no, I'm sorry. You think the shark.
No.
Or the mayor.
No, the mayor.
The mayor.
The mayor is the villain.
The
mayor keeps the beach open. The shark was doing its normal shark things. It was in the water.
But it wasn't doing normal shark things. Sharks don't. Okay. Elizabeth, I'd like to give you the floor to give your defense for this wrong opinion.
It's the same thing with the bear. The bear's not the villain here. The people are the villain.
Definitely not. No, this is a redemption story for the bear. The bear is the hero of this movie. Look, I think that man's hubris when it comes to nature is the villainy. It is, don't worry, we can control nature. That has never been true. It will never be true. Right. We gotta let it go, and we gotta start being a lot more caring and a lot more concerned when it comes to what we are doing to nature. This movie is literally like we inject drugs into like the natural environment and expect that everything will turn out okay. Like this is an allegory for a much bigger idea, right? I felt that when I read the script. I want to just entertain people. So let's not pretend this movie's like political or anything. It's not. But I definitely felt as an artist that there was a little something about sort of the chaos of the world around us. I read this script in the pandemic. There were fires in California. My kids are wearing masks to like just play outside, and it just felt like, man, making this movie felt a little bit to me like my ability. I was able to sort of tame the chaos a little bit and just sort of remind myself like nature should be our happy place. It should be a place that brings us peace, and so. At the end of this movie, it's very peaceful in the woods. And it's like we restore that sense to the outdoors. And I think reminding people that we cannot control nature was definitely part of this. And in Jaws, the mayor's like, we can handle the situation. You can't go up against the shark. And who knows why the shark was acting out. I get it. You think that's not a shark doing shark things? I'm not sure I agree with that, right. But it doesn't matter because the shark decided it was going to start eating people. Well, then you got to get everybody off out of the water.
Right.
Well, I hope you have officially replaced me on Real Blend, so I hope you're happy. Yeah, you have to deal with these guys once a week now.
Sean brought up tone earlier, and I want to mention Mark's score because it's a phenomenal score. Like it's a genuinely awesome score within a film that is dealing with different tonal shifts in terms of being over the top, but also serious at the same time. And I find that to be really cool because as a filmmaker, you direct your actors, but then when a score becomes a bit of a character in a film, I would imagine that conversations with Mark may be similar to what you would have with an actor in terms of like arcs and kind of tone and shifting tones and things like that. So what were your conversations like with Mark in terms of the tonal shifts and kind of what that score was going to give to each scene and how we perceived it?
Yeah, we had incredible. He's such an incredible collaborator. He's so facile. He's just so quick. He writes so fast. First of all, the movie takes place in 1985, and so nobody's going to understand that period when it comes to music better than Mark Mothersbaugh, right? So I'd been fortunate enough to work with him before. I was thrilled to go back to Mark for this film. He loves the tone, that's what he does. He has fun with the music. The this film had to be fun, but also had to be scary, had to be heroic. You know, the bear has its own theme. It had to set a sense of place a little bit, you know, had to move. It has to like move the story along. He really got it. He really did it all. And frankly, at the very end of the process, I mean, like literally, like we were in final mix and I asked him for new music for the very end because we just wanted the audience to go out on like a big high. And, you know, the end of it, it was like, there's a lot of sweet things, emotional things that happen in the end. And I think Mark really loved those sort of emotional beats, like the river and the dog and things like that. He loved that. But at the end of the day, I was like, yeah, but also I want people to leave pumped. I want people to walk out like psyched, you know? And so he was like, I got it. And he just kind of imbued a little more energy in all of those moments and brought back some other pieces of music. So I'm so grateful that he collaborated with me on this.
Great score.
All right, so we talk a lot about nature and these heartfelt elements, but this is a gory film. You really embellish the kills. I seem to think that you really love a severed leg. Like it seems like we have a couple of severed legs that appear out of. Is there a theme coming through here with these kills?
You know, when you look at real attacks, weirdly, it's the legs that get ripped off. So part of it was that. You know, and part of it was the opening sequence when that leg comes in. That was I always imagine it like that. I asked for that. You know, the original script it opened on the kids in the woods. So, and I thought, you know, we have to set the tone of this movie right away. And one of my touch points was Jurassic Park. People talk about like Jaws and they talk about animal attack movies, Cujo and things like that. Here's the thing. Bears are not inherently that scary. They're adorable. Like we look at bears and we're like, oh, it's so cute, you know? And I remember when in Jurassic Park, the original, like when they saw those dinosaurs, they were awe-inspired, right? It was like, wow, we're seeing such a cool thing in nature. Wow, wow, wow. And then the wow turns to terror when you realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm too close. It can move faster than I realize. Like, you know, you get that, like, your instinct kicks in after the, whoa, how cute, goes away. And you realize, like, oh my God, this thing's a threat. You know, I'm its prey. And that was my true north. It was like, how do we turn the awe and wonder of seeing a real animal in nature, something you want to do, you know, oh, like they say, oh, we have such good luck in nature, and turn that on its head into terror. And then how do we sort of, you know, upgrade that so that everybody understands, like, and we're going to go there with this movie. Like, this movie is going to be insane. The kills are going to be big time. We're going to take you on a ride. You know, I think that kind of, those sorts of moments are very visceral for people. And I want the pit of people's stomachs to drop, you know, when they see certain things. That's, for me, part of the ride I'm putting the audience on. It's how I can start to kind of like invest the audience and control them literally within their bodies, like viscerally in their bodies. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted everybody's sphincter to tighten up while they were sitting in their chair.
Mine did when that dude was hanging down from the tree and you just hear the biting of the leg. And I'm like, oh my God. And the blood just like, oh, it's so brutal.
Elizabeth, I'm going to cut you loose on this. Whenever I got done seeing it for the first time, my thought was, I really want to see it again, but I'd love for the presentation to be like an old drive-in theater. I'd love for it to be like an old print of this movie. So there are like some scratches and maybe some cigarette burns. That just feels like it would be the perfect sort of atmosphere for this movie. What would your perfect viewing experience of this movie be?
That's pretty good. I mean, I don't think people should like lie down with blankets. I think you want to be, you know, sort of like upright while you're watching this movie. The drive-through is such a great idea. I mean, now I'm picturing sitting on the swing set, you know, backlit by the bear attack. You know, the stars open above you. I'm down for this idea. I'm actually really enjoying that vibe. It's also like hearing it like the tinny sort of, I don't know if you remember, but like the tinny bass sound coming through the like speakers and stuff.
And instead of cigarette burns, you just have bear claws across the
bear claws. That's great. I think that being outside in nature at night while you watch the movie that's outside in nature at night.
Yeah,
I think that's
That's
it.
it.
I
Because
think
they do
I
Jaws
like
screenings where you can like float in the water, so that would be perfect. So
Also great too.
So you can watch the Bill and Shark.
Hand out cocaine and then screen this in the woods for everybody. Elizabeth, we're so thankful for having you on the show, and we can't wait for everybody to get a chance to see this. I know we're gonna have a blast with it. I'm glad it's one of those movies that's now available in theaters when crowds can get together and see it, because this is definitely a crowd experience. And thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, I appreciate it too. Thanks, guys.
We want to thank Elizabeth Banks for joining the show and speaking about Cocaine Bear, and of course our friends at Universal Pictures for hooking us up with that interview. We always love getting a filmmaker of that caliber onto Real Blend. We're going to review Cocaine Bear a little bit later on in the show. I want to get over to the nominations for the 3rd annual Critics' Choice Super Awards. So, and full disclosure, I do a lot of work for the Critics' Choice Association on the Super Awards. In particular, I'm one of the chairs for the film division alongside Travis Hobson, who runs a website called Punch Drunk Critics.
Oh, I know Travis. Travis,
do you really? Yeah, he lives in Baltimore.
I've known Travis for years. I see him. We actually sat next to him at the Black Panther Wakanda Forever screening.
Yep, exactly. So Travis and I work hand in hand on the film side of this. Is also a TV committee that does their picks for Super Awards. The reason why I love the Super Awards and why I am more invested in them than I am, say, the traditional Critics' Choice Awards or the Oscars is because I feel like with the categories that we do, which are horror, science fiction, fantasy, action, and comic book, we get into more of the populist titles and the actors that people care about. And I wanted to bring them up on the show today because we just announced the nominations today. And I know that they're going to, on Wednesday when we're recording, you guys are hearing this on Friday. I know that there are going to be some titles that you guys are super interested in hearing about. Case in point, The Batman leads all film nominations with 6.
Can I make a confession?
Yeah.
We often, we talk about our top 10 list and how they age for better or for worse. And we've looked back on some of our top 10 list years down the line and gone like, maybe I shouldn't, maybe that's too high. I'm already kicking myself for not putting The Batman on my top 10 list.
Interesting.
I really,
top 10 though.
I think I'm kicking my, just throwing that out there. I'm just going on the record. It didn't take long. Usually it takes me longer than that to start kicking.
We haven't finished February yet.
I know.
It's good. It's a good movie.
Here's some other things I'm proud of. In the action movie category, we have RRR nominated.
Damn right.
We also have 2 of the actors from the film nominated in the Best Actor in an Action Movie category. The Action Movie Actor category also has Tom Cruise for Top Gun Maverick and Brad Pitt for Bullet Train. Nicolas Cage is in there for The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Top Gun Maverick and Bullet Train are in the action movie category. So is The Woman King, and Viola Davis also got a nomination.
Damn right.
I'm just saying, I feel like the Super Awards are a place where you can honestly recognize people who are doing great work in some of these broader, more mainstream topics. Kev, I want to jump down to science fiction because I know you're going to appreciate this. Nope made it into Best Science Fiction Fantasy Movie.
Wow.
Daniel Kaluuya got in for actor.
Somebody actually understands how great that movie is.
And Keke Palmer got in for Best Actress in a Science Fiction Fantasy Movie. In addition to that, Everything Everywhere All at Once still did incredibly well. It got a picture for Science Fiction Fantasy. Ke Huy Quan got in for actor. And then actress, we got Stephanie Hsu and Michelle Yeoh, which I'm really, really happy about. Amber Midthunder got in for Prey, which I think is terrific.
Cool pick.
Science fiction fantasy.
Very cool
Jake,
pick.
I'll go to horror for you because you will appreciate this. The best horror movies according to the Super Awards: Barbarian, The Black Phone, Pearl, Smile, Speak No Evil, and X.
Okay, I was say if X doesn't get in, my God.
X is in.
Nope should also be there, by the way.
Well, no, we had to pick categories and we put Nope and sci-fi.
I would call it sci-fi over. I'd call it sci-fi.
You went from no nominations to now you're nitpicking the nomination you got. All right, we gotta be happy.
I feel about that. All right.
I mean, it's about an alien.
There was
horror
internal
movie.
discussion. I will say there was internal discussion about how it was featured. And
Horror movie.
Sean, what would you vote for horror?
oh, let me take a look at the categories
Barbarian.
again.
So
No, I
Sean,
don't
how does
love
this work?
Barbarian.
Is everyone in the Critics Association going to vote on these? Is that how it works, or is it just like a?
So we had nominating committees
Okay.
who came together and worked on either action, comic book, horror, or science fiction. They all made their recommendations, and then everybody had to give 3 per category, and then we just tallied who did the most. But now it's wide open. Anybody in the entire Critics' Choice
Ooh,
can
that's
vote
me.
for these. That is you, yes.
And
Of that group, I'm voting Black Phone for horror movie.
Interesting. Did you not see
Why
X?
do you?
I saw
you,
X.
you sleep
Yeah,
on
but-
Barbarian a little bit. I don't know.
I love
what you're-
Barbarian. I'm going X,
I know.
baby.
I know Jake does, but Sean.
No,
No, but
I
I gotta be
know.
honest. I liked
It's
but
fine.
didn't love Black Phone. Like I thought it was good,
Right.
but
well, Sean doesn't like great movies. Like he didn't like Nope.
True.
I'm
Yeah.
messing.
I am not ready for the discourse of this podcast. If in some form or fashion Sean doesn't love Oppenheimer, I am not
no.
ready for the meltdown that is going to occur. The question is Gabe ready for the meltdown?
Well,
Because it's going to be one of those situations where Gabe and I just sort of lean back.
But this isn't fair. Kevin has already declared it the greatest movie ever made.
I have not. I said it's my most anticipated, and I just finished the book. I'm very excited. This is like you being excited about No Way Home. Before
know.
you even saw No Way Home, you were excited about it.
I know.
I'll just say this: if we go watch Oppenheimer and it turns out that it's not good, we might never put up an episode ever again. And we won't even announce anything. It just
imagine if
the
it's-
show will cease to
awful?
will cease to exist. Yeah,
I mean, it's
Christopher
not going to
Nolan-
be not good, you know. Like, there's no
See?
way that Nolan makes a bad movie. As
love
much
it.
as I dislike
just-
Interstellar, I'm not going to say Interstellar is a bad movie. I just don't like it.
Sean,
I just
I wanna
pictured like
play,
a No Way Home for Kevin, but it's just a bunch of different Nolans swinging
Nolans.
around the Statue of Liberty, and they all land in like those different like superhero poses.
One of them's going backwards. The other one's in black and white. Or something.
One of them's pooping. One of them's disciplining his kids.
Jesus
It blows Kevin's mind.
That's an
That's
inside
inside-
joke.
That's way
Such an
inside
inside joke.
Sean, on that note, I want to put my hard-hitting journalist glasses
Oh, no.
and ask you
Whoa,
some questions.
whoa.
No, because I'm curious. What is there going to be any sort of ceremony to these awards, or is it more you guys as an association are going to announce your winners?
That's a great question. For
Ooh,
this
this is a great
year,
question.
we tried really hard. I'll give you guys a little inside baseball. We tried really hard to partner with an event that would allow us to have a ceremony that was part of, say, WonderCon or San Diego Comic-Con or even South by Southwest because of the timing of it. Because we released our winners in March, and that was a March event kind of as well, too. We weren't able to scramble together something that was satisfactory to us to be able to get the nominees out there. So for this year in particular, they will just be announced, and then we'll have winners give their speeches via hand-recorded videos that they do, and then we'll post them on our website. But we are building toward a partnership with some type of a festival where it will be a couple of panels that are dedicated to genre filmmaking, hopefully showcasing some of the members of the Critics' Choice. And then as part of that, maybe 3-day event, then on the Saturday night, we will have a ceremony that we will
that's
hand out the
cool.
winners to. Yeah. So, I mean, this is infancy stages. This is the third annual.
Are they going to
and the
make us
first two
wait in
took place
another room when that
COVID.
happens too?
Yeah.
I ask because looking at the nominees the last, couple years, it does feel like a list of projects and talent that, as you're saying, that are very populous, that a lot of people would be interested in. And as we're constantly having this conversation about, do award ceremonies have a place in, sort of like the mainstream audience as far as network TV and all of that? This feels like the sort of thing that could turn into an interesting thing for people to see, people to watch. Like, especially if I imagine these movies that people have championed throughout the year. Imagine Justin Long getting on stage for Barbarian. Like what a thing that we don't think of in the awards season. So I'm curious to see how it develops.
Like, imagine this category. This is actors for a comic book role. If all 5 of these showed up for your event, it would be Benedict Cumberbatch for Doctor Strange, Paul Dano for the Batman, Colin Farrell for the Batman, Tanaka Huerta for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and Robert Pattinson for the Batman. I mean, that's a stacked category, you know, and it's a stacked category that fans of those movies would want to tune in to see who gets it.
Yeah,
so.
and the fan favorite Everything Everywhere All at Once is also represented. It's
Absolutely.
like yeah.
Are you guys starting to
guys-
feel a little swell of Top Gun maybe winning Best Picture?
God, I wish.
If we can have this conversation, if it were to win PGA and WGA, then I would say yeah. A lot of people keep comparing it to Coda, but at the end of the day, Coda still won all the necessary. Like, yes, it had a late surge, but Coda still won all of the necessary markers you oftentimes needed. Look, there are exceptions to every rule, but it still won all of those things needed. And the thing that Coda had going for it that Top Gun doesn't is a swell of actor support. There was the Troy Kotsur win. I think Top Gun not having any acting nominations hurts it.
Did it get editing?
It did get an editing nomination, but it didn't get cinematography, which showed a little bit of weakness. And Cruise. I think we could be taking this a lot more seriously if Cruise were in the actor race. If it wins WGA and PGA, dude, then I think we're talking about it. I just don't see that happening.
Told Tom Cruise that literally that movie, I want to paraphrase it saved the industry.
Saved Hollywood's ass.
So that was going to be my question: is do you think that not that quote went viral and is going to change people's minds, but do you think that there are enough people in the voting body that feel that way? That they're is the producer group big enough, or are there enough actors that think about movies in that way or feel that way about theatrical?
Yeah, we also have
industry?
to talk about the preferential ballot. Like, that is such an X factor when it comes to what wins Best Picture, because for every person that's going to put Everything Everywhere All at Once at number one, there are going to be quite a few maybe older Academy voting members who didn't get it that are putting it at maybe 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
But I
lost them on the hot dog fingers.
Lost them on the hot dog fingers or the fighting dildos or the fighting butt plugs.
Didn't they win DGA?
They did win DGA, which is big.
Won DGA, which is really
so I think
big.
Spielberg's shot at Best Director number 3 is done.
I mean,
I don't argue that. There's no love for Fabelmans.
You could see I know, and we'll get into this obviously as we get closer to the Oscars, but you could potentially see a director go to the Daniels and then Top Gun taking picture.
I wouldn't be mad about that.
Neither would I.
Fine. I'm okay with that.
I just feel like Top Gun everyone loves that movie.
Yeah.
And
which is what the preferential ballot is all about.
Which is also why Cruise went to that event. I mean, I would imagine.
Yeah, because so isn't that sort of interesting, guys? Top Gun has been nominated for everything. Yeah. That's the first time he's really shown up and shaken hands. And didn't you guys find it interesting that all the articles that talked about what we're talking about right now, if you don't know, is the Oscar nominees luncheon, where everyone who's nominated shows up, sort of hangs out, talks to each other, has lunch, and then they all pose for a picture. Every single story I read about it was all about how everybody in that room was making a beeline over, which kind of makes me feel like, isn't it kind of crazy? Like this is going to sound like the douchiest, most name droppy thing ever. And so I beg your forgiveness.
Bring it on.
But isn't it nuts that we all have multiple pictures with Tom Cruise and every actor in that room was beelining over to try to get one picture, a thing that we have 5 of.
To the point earlier, though, that leads me to believe that a lot of those people are going to be filling out their ballots and going, you know what, that movie fucking saved my job. I'm putting that down.
I mean, that Spielberg quote was
but Spielberg ain't gonna vote for it.
No, but I'm saying, I just mean that is that the reflection of the mentality of
what do you think he votes for? Everything Everywhere All at Once?
I think he votes for Fabelmans.
He's a Tar guy.
Wait, do you think he votes for his own movie?
Hell yeah, he does.
Do you think people vote for their own movies?
Yes, absolutely.
You think he puts Fabelmans at 1?
Absolutely, he does.
I don't think he does.
I would. He would. I don't know if he would ever talk about it, but I bet you. Why wouldn't he? Especially when he thinks his movie might be on the cusp. Oh, I guarantee you he does.
I don't.
It actually doesn't matter what year it is. He writes in Saving Private Ryan.
He writes in Saving Private Ryan. Yeah.
At the top he just writes, "You owe me for Saving Private Ryan."
Yeah, and that's 1 vote for Saving Private Ryan. 2020.
What's his first Best Picture win?
Schindler's List.
Is that his only?
Yeah, that's his only Best Picture win, and then he has 2 other Oscars for director.
I mean, Schindler's List probably is his best movie.
Incredible.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually aired a couple of
is.
clips on the show today because we had Liam Neeson on my show. We were doing the 30th anniversary of Schindler's List, and we aired the I could have saved more moment at the end.
Scene, yeah.
And it's just like in that 30 seconds, you're just reminded of like, this is the movie that.
Yeah,
because I think it's one of those movies that like people forget how good it is, and they're just told and kind of parrot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Schindler's List is great, but then
it's
you
hard
see
to
it.
rewatch.
Yes,
It's not a movie people are.
Yeah, but
I always try to find someone who hasn't seen it as an opportunity to rewatch it.
That's a great, because otherwise, same.
I mean, you could make an argument that the scene when the actors are walking with the real people, the generations of people, is one of the most powerful pieces of cinema I've ever seen in my life. Because it was like you took this horrifically awful event in history and you paired it with this story of somebody who did something so incredible to help people, and then the number of lives that generationally got to live. What a brilliant idea. And that could have what a scene. That I can't imagine.
I feel like you guys are sleeping on the BFG though.
I like the BFG. One of my favorite interviews I ever had with Spielberg was for the BFG. Actually, he was great for that.
What other Best Picture nominees he would have gotten? Jaws, Raiders, E.T., Color Purple.
He lost Saving Private Ryan to Shakespeare in Love.
He's got a lot recently. The Post, Bridge of Spies.
I think Schindler is his best movie. I think it is. I think it's the best movie he's ever made. I really do. I mean, what did Tarantino say? Best movie versus best film. Yeah. And he said Jaws was the best movie ever made, but he said it was different from film is what I remember him explaining that.
But he also said Temple of Doom is the best.
Temple of Doom is amazing. And he's right. He's not the best. Tarantino loved Temple of Doom. He was on our side.
Oh, that's right. Because it is. It's terrific.
It's great.
Kevin, really quick, I don't know if I ever told you, because I don't know if you saw the updated, I did this piece on this movie prop collector outside of Chicago and a scene that I added to a later cut of the piece. Thank you. He has the heart.
Oh.
From Temple of Doom.
So cool.
The prop part.
Yeah,
okay.
he has the prop. The
part. Scene that basically created the PG-13.
Yeah, exactly.
This week in movies, there's a film coming to Netflix by Christopher Landon, who did Freaky, I believe, and Happy Death Day.
Freaky and Happy Death Day.
And it's called We Have a Ghost, and Jacob saw it. Jake.
I did. This was a pretty pleasant surprise for me. I got the junket and pressed play not knowing much about it other than like I'd kind of seen like a little bit of a trailer and thought like, oh, I don't know, this doesn't look great. And all of a sudden, like these one-liners and this really sharp script just started standing out to me and really kind of making me perk up and go, oh, that's funny. Oh, that's clever. Oh, that's interesting how they shot that. The opening shot is fantastic. There's also, like, for horror aficionados, there's really great little tips of the cap to like classic ghost stories. There's a red ball that rolls across the floor, which if you know the Changeling, like, and so I kept thinking like, look, this movie is. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say like it's the greatest thing I've ever seen, but it was just so much significantly better than I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And then I had to go pause and go like, okay, who wrote and directed this? And then when I saw it was Landon, I went, that makes much more sense. If you've seen Freaky, if you've seen particularly Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You, which are incredibly
Happy Death Day is
clever,
amazing.
So smart, clever, funny, scary movies. You realize it just fits into, I would say, I didn't love Freaky, and I love Happy Death Day. I would say the barometer on this leans a little bit closer to Freaky than it's not nearly as good as like a Happy Death Day, but it does still feature that sharp, witty, fun, clever sense of humor. Mackie and David Harbour are really strong in it. David Harbour has to do a lot because he's not allowed to speak. He plays a ghost that cannot speak, so he has to speak a lot with his eyes, and it really gave me a better appreciation for how good of an actor he is.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off, but you brought something up just now that I'm trying to remember the exact scene, because the point you just made about him acting without dialogue and using his eyes, I asked him.
Did you do the junket?
And I said, going back like in your career, was there a silent moment that you had as an actor where you didn't have dialogue that actually you remember?
Please tell me he said that's a good question when you asked that, because that is a great question.
I think. Thank you, but
he was silent. He actually gave no answer.
No, but I said do you remember a scene that impacting you that you couldn't speak? But it was more of like just the way you had to do it. And he brought up a scene from Revolutionary Road, which I forgot he was in. Right, because Sam Mendes and I forgot he was in that.
Yeah,
I think it was Revolutionary Road.
Yeah, he's in Revolutionary Road.
And I didn't know that it was based on a book. I guess it was because he talked about this scene that was in the book that they didn't have in the script or something like that. And he said he remembered how he felt on the day, not saying the dialogue. It was pretty cool, like where his mind went on that. But anyways, you just brought it back to my mind because you're talking about him acting with his eyes and more silently. But yeah, anyways, go ahead.
It's a strong film. It's on Netflix. I think if you press play, you will be very pleasantly surprised at how sharp and clever it really is.
I was telling you and I were talking about this before. Christopher Landon is a really exciting filmmaker. You were kind of touching on that to the point where I wasn't sure. It kind of just looked like a whatever Netflix movie, even though I love David Harbour.
Yeah.
And then I saw that he was doing it and I was like, oh, well, I'm sure it's got to be more interesting.
Whenever I read the premise and saw like the first 30 seconds of the trailer, honestly, my first thought was like, what are Mackie and Harbour doing?
I would love to get him on the show because every time I see him talking about
he's
movie making, he's just really interesting. Really
he lit up whenever I told him, I was like, whenever I asked him if the red ball that rolled across the floor in the attic is a Changeling reference, he was like, dude, yes, thank you. Like he is a horror aficionado.
Well, let's put the Blender family on it. Tweet at him. I think he's on Twitter.
All right. So the big movie opening this week is Cocaine Bear, which has gotten a ton of attention because of the unique, based on a true story angle of drugs that were thrown from an airplane and landed in the woods of Tennessee, and a bear got into them. But so from what I understand, everything that takes place in the movie is like speculation of what might have happened had the bear.
Well, no, the bear didn't kill anybody. The bear died pretty much. I mean, I don't know the timing of it, but so I'll bring this up because O'Shea Jackson Jr. made a great point in my interview for this. He goes, we're basically Titanic, because the point he's making is that we're based on a real event. But things have changed and circumstances have changed. The Titanic did happen, that it hit the iceberg, just like this bear did get into this cocaine that came out of this, airplane. Okay. But, the Jack and Rose story is obviously the fictional aspect of it. Sure. And then Cocaine Bear then goes, all right, now we're going to take this into like a Jaws centered idea. And we're going to have, what would happen if the bear actually got high on cocaine and became like super powered and murderous towards like bad people.
I even equate it more to like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like Texas Chainsaw is based on a killer in Wisconsin, but basically it takes this premise and it's like, okay, but this happened. But what if it actually happened like this?
Right. And I think O'Shea Jackson Jr. Was kind of like just playing around. Obviously Titanic is a very different situation, but I think the point he was making was that like Alden Ehrenreich even chimed in too. They're both based on real events that have taken these real events and put them more into an extreme movie centered environment. The stupid question though, the Jack and Rose characters, are they based on anybody for real?
No.
Okay, so they are completely fictional.
Like Molly Brown is, and
the unsinkable Molly Brown, and most of the secondary characters are. But my understanding is that James Cameron was basically looking to make Romeo and Juliet on the Titanic,
right? And so that's kind of what I think they were getting at. Was like
Montagues and all that.
It's a real story.
He got Romeo.
And you're right. I didn't even think about that. I mean, this film. So one of my favorite things about this movie is telling people it's based on a true story, because in the real story,
such a loose way to put it.
It's based on inspired by,
but it actually is. So down to the whole scenario from the beginning of the film, which is, there's a really great moment with Matthew Rhys, which we won't get into specifically, but
also to your point really quick, like this movie is basically the closest we're ever going to get to the Americans reunion, because you've got Matthew Rhys, Kerry Russell, and Margot Martindale all back together. So if you love the Americans,
and I believe, and I think I had this right, but Matthew Rhys's character is Andrew C. Thornton, because he's a real guy, person. And in reality, he was flying. They were flying, and he was dumping the cocaine out of the plane to lose the weight of the plane, right? And in reality, he does jump out of the plane, and I think his chute doesn't work properly and he dies. That's in the real story. And then I think there was like 40 containers or whatever it was of cocaine. Bear gets into it and the bear dies. So then from that point forward, the movie becomes, what happens if the bear is high and does all this crazy stuff? And honestly, like I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I listen, at the end of the day, like the concept may be better than the film. It probably actually is. But the title, I think one of the things I had a hard time with in the films, I don't know that the movie tonally knew what it was doing. There were times where it is a legit horror film, like brutal, disturbing, like disgusting, grisly, literally violence. I think grisly is actually in the MPA description of the movie, which is actually pretty funny. But then, you know, it tries to be the over the top film that we all think it's going to be. I have no problem with tonal shifts. I have no problem with a movie shifting tone and going back and forth between serious and funny and horror and comedy, whatever. I do think that sometimes there needs to be a dedication to a certain tone and an understanding of the switch. And I think there were moments where the film got so hyper violent that I thought it almost took away from the goofiness of it, in my personal opinion. I'm not saying that you can't have violence in films like this, but there were some scenes where I was just like, okay, that just felt overly done or too gross, or like it just didn't fit the flow of it. And then you have these two young kids that are in the film that are, you know, are put to the test of everything you can think of in an R-rated movie. That was funny, but then there were times where I'm like, was that funny? I don't really know. And so like there were just moments where I don't think the film knew what it was in a weird way, but then there were times where it was entertaining as hell. I would pay to see this with a crowd in a theater. I think it'd be fun. I think it would just be like a really fun Friday night, Saturday night, get a couple drinks if you drink, go out with your buddies or friends or whoever you want to go out with, girlfriends, whatever, and go see it. And it's, what is it, 95, 90, 100 minutes, whatever it is. It's called Cocaine Bear. It's rated R. It's a movie that I would have loved to have seen when I was in high school or college. It would have been something that I would have been like begging, like to go on a Thursday night at a midnight showing with my buddies. It'd have been fun. Yeah, it works. I mean, I don't think it's anywhere near as good as what the concept may present it to be. The trailer, I think, is better than the film. But then you have really great moments. I thought Ray Liotta was great. I thought O'Shea Jackson Jr. was great. I mean, Alden Ehrenreich is fun. I thought Kerry Russell was fun. The kids are fun. I thought Banks did a really decent job with the directing. I mean, I actually do think she's a really good director, and I want to see what else she does, because it shot well and performed well, and the way they actually shot with the bear, it's very cool. If you go back and listen to the interview that you may have heard already prior to this moment, she talks about how that was done, and it works. It's effective. It's just, I just don't know what the movie. I don't know that the movie knew what it was, and I think. But there were enough moments of entertainment and fun and, you know, horror that I was perfectly entertained with it. I want to see it in the theater with crowds. I would go. I would pay $12, $15 to go see it on an opening weekend. I would. It's just fun.
Jake, where do you fall on it?
I liked it. I will admit that the novelty for me wore off about halfway through. I was like really into it for about 45 minutes. And then I think after 45 minutes, I just sort of went, okay, so that's just what this is. This is, it's, I haven't been equated, and I've used this comparison a couple of times, but I equate it to one of my favorite moments in sitcom history, which is in Arrested Development, where Jason Bateman pulls out his brother Job's paper sack from the fridge that says, "Don't open, dead dove inside." And he looks inside and then looks up and goes, "Well, I don't really know what I expected." And that's kind of how I feel about this movie, which is like, it's exactly as advertised. Like if you go see a movie called Cocaine Bear, this is kind of what you get. And it almost reminds me of like kind of how and I've only seen it the one time in theaters, but how I remember reacting to Snakes on a Plane all those years back.
But it's better than Snakes on a Plane, though.
I remember, it's 100 times better than Snakes on a Plane. Yeah. But I just remember like everyone being so excited about that movie and then like going to see it and then like 30 minutes in just being like, oh, that's it. It's just that. It's just Snakes on a Plane. I told Elizabeth Banks, and that I would have loved. I think because I watched it via screener in my home with a couple of drinks with a couple of friends, and we had a good time. We had fun with it. By the end, I think we were all collectively like, okay, like let's wrap this up. We're good to go.
Dave was in the corner.
Yeah, wrap it up. I do believe that like
I'm a DVD extra, please.
Yeah. I do believe that like a drive-in theater experience with like old, dirty, grimy grindhouse print is what perfect, because I imagine this movie whenever
you
I
can
think
barely
of like
see it.
Because I think of like the old
through the car
video
radio.
store. Yeah, exactly.
Bear claws across the screen.
You're making out with someone and not paying attention
You're like,
to
oh,
it.
wait, hold on,
It's
he's gonna kill somebody.
And you look up, is a leg severed?
Yeah, I remember like the video store that I went to growing up, and the way that the guy who owned it arranged the horror section. And he built the shelves to kind of make it look like its own little private corner. It almost looked like what you would imagine would be like the X-rated section. Yeah, but it was for horror films. And when you would walk into that section, you would pick up these old dusty 80s VHS tapes, and oftentimes have to like dust it off. And there'd be some, like those 80s horror movie posters, those graphics are gorgeous. Like they were oftentimes like hand-drawn art and, really great. And that's kind of how I would imagine discovering this film for the first time. Like walking in that old, like dirty VHS section of horror films and like kind of seeing some sort of mean bear on it and like dusting it off. And then all of a sudden you see like Cocaine Bear. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. That's how I pictured this. That I feel like this movie's at the wrong place in time. I would have loved to have discovered it today and had it come out 40 years ago when Sean was in college.
If I was 15, 16, 17 years old and I was like in high school and like this was coming out, I would round up all my friends, go on Friday night. I mean, and it would be a blast. Yeah. And it honestly, like as Jake said, it's as advertised. So, it is what it is. But it's a lot. I will say one thing is a lot more violent than I thought it was going to be. Like it's pretty brutal.
Yeah,
you guys are slapping a lot of parameters on a bad movie to try to make it sound good.
Okay, I'm so confused because I seem to remember you texting us about how much you were into it.
No, I said it got off to a really fast start, which I thought it did.
Yeah.
You said you made it halfway. I made it about 10 minutes. Because then after 10 minutes, I wrote you back and I was like, oh, never mind.
Oh, that's right. You did say that.
Yeah. Oh, come on.
No, dude, it's not good. It has a funny premise, kind of. But I
liked it.
It's actually boring. There's a bunch of subplots going on in the movie that don't go anywhere. There's a long subplot with Alden Ehrenreich and O'Shea Jackson Jr., where they are just walking to a gazebo. It's the entire movie. That's their whole plot until they meet another character who's on top of the gazebo, and then they have to interact with the bear. And when they interact with the bear, it's not funny. It's not funny. Like the bear lands on top of Alden Ehrenreich, and nothing happens. It just sort of drags. There's another, I can't even tell you the subplot with Kerry Russell, because I don't know what she's doing. She's just walking through the woods looking for her kid. And then there's another subplot with Margot Martindale that has nothing to do with anything. There's a bunch of plot threads that I thought would be interesting.
Pissed off Kevin.
He left. I wanted it to be really zany. And you saying, oh, it should have been discovered in the 1980s as a dusty VHS. No, it shouldn't. It just should have been left alone. And Kevin saying, oh, I wish if I were a teenager and I'd go see it as a. No, you're not. You're a 30-something-year-old man in the year 2023.
Sure, but I guess my point being that like
we're better than this movie now.
Well, oftentimes we discover film, and I get what you're saying, and you're not wrong, but oftentimes when you discover particularly old 80s horror films, there's 70s horror films, and they're particularly when they're like the B horror films, you watch them through a context of what they are and also through a prism of forgiveness. And I guess the point I was trying to make was this movie would be what it wanted to be if it were that, but it's not that. So you're not wrong. And I mean, look, I admit it to you. I halfway through, I went, okay, I'm done. I'm over it. I think I'm somewhere between you and Kevin, and that like I enjoyed it for what it was, but what it wasn't necessarily good.
And I think that you could do like if Elizabeth Banks really wanted to do a spoof of that type of movie,
yes,
but make it updated.
Yeah,
there are ways to winkingly make hey, we're doing that kind of movie. But it's still funny and it's still contemporary. Instead, it feels like she just tried to make that kind of movie.
This would have been great for like the Tarantino Rodriguez Grindhouse movie. Like if this had been one of the trailers or had been like one of the
100%,
like one of the first or the second, like this would have fit in. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make.
Jake, you've cut this down to if this had been a trailer in a different movie.
I think this is actually not the easiest film to review because I did enjoy it. I don't think it's a great. What I'm saying is like I don't think it's a great film overall in terms of like, oh, this is a phenomenal movie.
I can't even say it's a good movie.
I disagree with that. I actually liked Cocaine Bear. So if somebody said to me,
where are we ranking it all? We're in ranking it. Where? Jesus Christ! Can we start over? Where are we ranking it?
Welcome. That's a 250
out of 5.
Jesus.
I gave it a 2 out of 5. I gave it 2.
I'd give it a 3.
Kev? I give it a 3.
Yeah,
I give it a 3.
Yeah, so you guys aren't that far off. I haven't seen it, but hearing your guys' thoughts on it, Kevin, I think I totally get where you're getting, and Jake, I think you both are very similar boats. Whereas if you saw the trailer and you like were like, oh, I'm in for like a weird time.
Yeah.
And you're in that mentality of like going for a fun thing. I think that to me, that's how this movie reads.
That's what is how
I wish it were
play.
funnier. If that's the case, I wish it were funnier. I would have liked it to have been funnier. Thought it was kind of flat. All right. Anyway, let's get to Elizabeth Banks blend. They had the guest of the show. Hope she didn't listen to the review section. Oh, before we do that, let's throw to a quick break. We'll see you on the other side. Okay, and we're back. Let's get into Elizabeth Banks blend. And I'll go first. And I'm going with Betty Brant. I'm going with her role as Betty Brant in the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, but specifically in Spider-Man 2. I love the fact that she has sweet interactions with Peter Parker, the Tobey Maguire Peter Parker. I love the way that she handles J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. I wish they had more for her to do. Betty Brant is a important character in the Spider-Man universe. She kind of got sidechanged for both Mary Jane Watson and then later on in Spider-Man 3 for the Gwen Stacy role. But I think when you got somebody of Elizabeth Banks's character to play Betty Brant, the potential for her to grow into more of a supporting part was there. I just think Raimi didn't get the chance to do it in his films. But in the scenes that she had, she honestly stole them. I thought she was really terrific in those. And so when looking over her filmography, I wanted to continue to celebrate the work that she did with Raimi and specifically, again, single out Spider-Man 2. So that's where I went. Kev, where did you go?
So this might be an unpopular pick, but I love her and Zack and Miri Make a Porno. Yeah. And so obviously I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan, but outside of like being a Kevin Smith fan, I thought that her and Seth Rogen were great together. I loved their chemistry. I loved the beginning of the film. I loved their friendship and obviously becoming lovers in the film. But I thought there was a really cool concept of kind of like how they fell in love. That movie, I don't think it's a perfect film. It obviously has some issues, but I just think she's wonderful in that film. I love her. I also, there's a great scene when they're like, because part of the whole drama of the film was that they're falling for each other, or they already were in love with each other. And this concept of like making this porno and kind of what it does for them, and like versus like, they're making love on video rather than just doing it for, what the concept of the film is. I'm trying to be as PG about this as possible.
It's called Zack and Miri Make a Porno. I think people get the idea.
It's a great title, by the way. But I love her in that. I mean, obviously Slither and films that I think she's great in a lot of her Hunger Games performances are incredible as well. But when I think of her, I think of that performance because I like their relationship. I like their chemistry. I like their bond and their friendship and their love story. And, that movie is rooted in a lot of R-rated, raunchy comedy aspects. But I do believe that there's a grounded nature that both Elizabeth and Seth bring to that performance in that movie that I thought really worked for me.
That was a different time for Kevin. He was trying new things. That was the Jersey Girl type,
Yeah.
Was that around like the Red State Cop Out sort of
right
era?
before that stuff, but before he started going back into the View Askew universe.
What would you know about Bruce Willis movies, Sean?
But that is
Cop Out.
Cop Out. Even Kevin Smith, I don't think likes Cop Out.
Well, it should have been called what it should have been called, which is A Couple of Dicks.
A couple of dicks or a pair of dicks or something like that.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'm gonna go with Zack and Miri Make a Porno. Again, it's probably a strange choice, but I actually really like her in that movie. So, all right.
Jake, where'd you go?
I'm going with her work in the Hunger Games films, and this is a series that I gotta be honest, like I don't particularly love. I think there's a lot about it that's admirable, and a lot of stuff about it I do like. But as a whole, I think the series just got weaker and weaker and weaker, to the point where like I just didn't care. But I do think her performance is layered in a lot of really interesting ways. I feel like she has to play a couple of different kind of characters at one time. And I think a lot of actors would kind of use, you know, the very hyperbolic sort of makeup and the costumes and everything almost as a crutch, where it's like, well, that does most of the work. And I feel like she gives her character layers that somehow, as wild and crazy as all of the visuals of her character are, shine through that in a lot of ways, which allows one to prop up the other. They each, you know, the layers that she gives the character and the visualization of how different her wild and crazy her character looks like all the time. It was really one of my favorite pieces of that entire sort of Hunger Games series. And so I thought she did really, really impressive work there. So I thought she stayed consistently great in a series that I found to start diminishing toward the end.
I like those films.
Her and Tucci were terrific.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In those movies. They both did really good.
Catching Fire is legit great.
I did love the visualization of Catching Fire. That's the one with the island.
Yeah, well,
I did.
The cool thing about Catching Fire, and not to get too minutia, but there was a really cool way they played with the aspect ratio in that film. So he shot, I think, all of the stuff in the during the games in IMAX, but I think he used 65 millimeter IMAX cameras, like genuine like IMAX cameras. But I don't know if you guys remember or saw it in the theater. It's really cool how they did it. Like when Jennifer Lawrence is going up into the games, we're in wide, and then as she goes up, the screen just enhances and then jumps to the IMAX. It's again, very subtle but clever way of like you know, disconnecting the world of the game versus the reality or whatever.
That's smart.
Similar to kind of like what Spielberg did with Ready Player One, where they did 35 on the outside world and then super clean, pristine digital, obviously within the game. Very interesting choices, but like a really clever way to play with aspect ratio.
Can I ask you a big question? And Gabe's going to hate me for bringing up such a big question so near the end of the show. Is Ready Player One top 10 Spielberg for you?
For me, it is.
Yeah,
I am obsessed with that movie. I believe that the first key race that they have at the beginning of the film is one of the most extraordinary pieces of cinema I've ever seen.
Maybe
it's
like, oh sorry,
yeah, it's a good question. If I'm putting together my top 10 favorite Spielberg movies, it's on there.
I loved it, and it was on my top 10 list that year. I don't know if I'd call it top 10 favorites. Spielberg.
Maybe this is a little reductive or cheating, but I feel like the fact, like, how can you not put Spielberg directing a Kubrick scene as top 10?
Yeah, and that scene is so masterful.
I mean, I remember, if you're making that argument, couldn't you make that argument about AI?
For AI, sure.
Well, that's different. That's like he did the
Kubrick,
full
though, yeah.
Like
I'm thinking of like what's on my okay, so like what, Jaws, Raiders,
but AI is good.
I like AI.
Yeah. We're on the AI train.
I think Ready Player One is
not
Last Crusade,
but
Close Encounters.
The Kubrick scene is. I want to say that he had Kubrick's family on set when they shot that, or they had some approval of some sort. Like because I don't know if people out there, if you guys read the book Ready Player One, that's not in the book. I think they go into Blade Runner in the book.
Yes, they do. Yes, but
so
they couldn't get the rights to Blade Runner,
which serendipitously worked out better for the movie because they nailed the Overlook. Like it
God,
looked,
when they played that theme, the dun,
oh
dun,
my god! And what a smart way to play with it. Like what was the clue?
A creator that hates his creation.
Oh, that was so smart. And then they had like all that movie is amazing. And
honestly, I'm not like trying to like pat myself on the back, but whenever I saw the movie and they say creator that hates his creation, instantly I was like, oh, it's fucking Shining. It's gonna be The Shining. It's gonna be Stephen King, The Shining.
Dude, the ending battle when like Chucky's in the ending battle.
Like, that's one of my favorite F-bombs in recent memory. That's one of my it's fucking F-bomb. Chucky.
Oh my god.
What a
great film.
I honestly think I'm just slapping my list together like in the moment, and I have it at 11.
Really?
Yeah, it would be outside of my top 10, but if we're looking at Jaws, Close Encounters, for me, Raiders 1, Last Crusade, E.T., Jurassic Park, Catch Me If You Can, Minority Report, Saving Private Ryan, and honestly probably War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds.
Schindler's List.
War of the Worlds, it might be his most underrated movie. I think that scene,
Minority Report is his most underrated.
See, Minority Report, people do love Minority Report. I think War of the Worlds was I will say this about War of the Worlds: the second half isn't as good as the first half.
Unfortunately, I just feel like the
first half is
he
so
could have
great.
veered away
It's
from
so
the. Oh my
great.
god! And like after 9/11, that was such like a freaking. Like,
that was a
oh my God.
terribly disturbing scene. Yeah,
I feel like for a filmmaker who a lot of the praise that he gets is his filmmaking. You know, not a lot of filmmakers get talked about of like the look at this shot, look at this.
Yeah.
War of the Worlds, I feel like doesn't get talked about enough about how insane the highway stuff is. How he messes with scale.
Just even when
bridge.
like they're coming out of the
the way
ground
that he
first
shoots
time.
that whole thing, yeah.
and it's like super overexposed.
I saw a breakdown of that recently where someone was talking about it's just Spielberg doing Spielberg. Like Spielberg is just like the quintessential director, and how he shoots that first scene to set up the scale so that you understand where they are for the rest of the movie.
Yeah,
And Cruise lets himself be an asshole, which he never does on screen.
Oh yeah.
He's great as an asshole.
Yeah.
That scene
They need to
when
get back together.
When he goes outside with Dakota Fanning. And
Your
like
favorite
he's like
celebrity couple,
Spielberg and Cruise.
Let's get those kids back together.
lightning doesn't strike twice or something, whatever he says in that
and they go,
scene.
shh.
Yeah.
And the look, doesn't he laugh? He almost like laughs. Like when the lightning hits, it's almost like a startled, like, oh, really? Like it's so. Gosh, the
so
opening
good.
of that film, and that's actually a really good movie to watch at home, by the way, because he shot it in 1:8.5, so it's a really tall
I
ratio.
rewatched it recently and it holds the
It's
hell up,
really
man. It holds the hell up.
beautiful.
Also, I need to rewatch Munich because every once in a while someone will post a clip or a shot on Twitter and I go, Jesus, that's beautifully shot. I need to rewatch
That's
it.
one of his best
Audience
movies.
picks.
So magnificent. Yeah. Elizabeth Banks was in Catch Me If You Can to pull
She was.
pull it around.
Was she?
Yes, she
Oh,
was. That's why we're talking about Spielberg. Audience picks.
That's not why we were talking about Spielberg.
that's exactly. Well done.
That's a good connection, though.
John Dalvez says the details. Adam J.K. says the next 3 days. Stagehand says Rita in Power Rangers, which I know she got a lot of attention for.
You went all in on that, which is cool. If you grew up as a Power Rangers fan, you went all in on Rita.
Rusty went with the choice that I was going to go with, which is the Lego Movie. I do love her as Wild Style. Deadline Soul said Slither. Zen Jake, which I guess is a calmer version of the Jake that we get on a weekly basis, said Effie Trinket, specifically in the Mockingjay movies. Danny Thill gave love to the titles across her filmography, including Hunger Games and Role Models, starring Paul Rudd. Is that right?
Yeah.
And Sean
No,
William,
Zach
Sean William
Mary?
Scott.
No, Zach and Mary, Kev.
I'm sure there's people that put on there. We only pull a handful.
You're out of here.
I might be on my own on that. I don't know. I like Zach and Mary. Remember Justin?
Don't worry about it, Sean.
Wait, what's going on here? What are you guys laughing
All
at?
right, for next week, we're going to play hashtag Rocky Blend, where we're going to pick your favorite Rocky movie. Hashtag Rocky Blend.
But no, not Stallone in it, right? Any
That's
Rocky
your
movie
choice.
without
That is your choice. So let's be fair. That does
Across the
include
franchise.
Creed 1 and Creed 2. Because he is a prominent member of Creed 1
And if
Creed
you
2.
somehow see, well, no, Rocky. I'm saying Rocky franchise. Creed 3 is still the Rocky franchise.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
but
I
Doesn't
see.
exist. Yeah.
But he's not. But
Interesting.
Stallone's not in Creed 3. Oh,
It's
so you're
not-
just saying Rocky
it's not
in
what's
general.
your favorite Rocky,
Okay.
the
They
character. It's Rocky.
Barely mention him.
Yeah, but it's
Okay.
just that my point is Rocky. I was going to
Okay.
ask you guys this: if we should have special rules for this one.
Oh.
Take
I
Rocky
don't want
1
to spoil
out.
stuff. No, I was thinking of something a little bit different. Because I feel like because Rocky is such a classic and it built everything on it. These are a little harder to do. We don't always do like favorite from the franchise. What if we do favorite Rocky scene? Because I feel like Rocky's a
that's
franchise
fun.
that is full of like great scenes, like this fight, this moment with Adrian. That like it has
I got
great
mine.
moments.
That's a
Okay.
great moment.
Would you guys be?
I like
open
That's a
to
great
that?
idea. I love
I
that.
like that.
That's
Yeah.
really great.
I like that.
All right, let's
Might
do
be a little
favorite,
rocky when we start doing it, but
We'll do favorite
get there.
scene from across the Rocky franchise.
We'll make sure to pick up the pace so it doesn't drago.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Our next premium episode is a mailbag. So check the description below for how you can sign up for those episodes. Follow us on social media at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell, at Gabe Kovac, and the show is at Real Blend. We'll be back next week with a full-on episode. Got a couple of really exciting interviews in the hopper, and
In
some
the
cool stuff.
hopper?
And some
chief
cool
hopper?
stuff.
What's in the
for
hopper
March.
mean?
In the hopper.
Oh, you know, a hopper. It was like
You
you know,
know,
like
the
the
hopper.
beans, like beans on top of a grinder.
You know,
It's a
Kevin, the
hopper.
hopper.
It's coming. What?
It's in the hopper.
Wait, is that from like when you used to talk in the 1920s? Like, is that from that time
Yeah,
period?
we got a good episode in the hopper, see?
Like the speakeasy. I'll meet you down at the speakeasy where we're going to get some topics.
We're going to talk about our favorite Rocky moments, eh?
Make sure you check out Sean's interviews with Citizen Kane cast and Orson Welles. They're really great. We put them on the Real Blend channel. They're phenomenal.
All right.
CinemaScope, is it worth it?
Let's bring our boys back home. How about it, huh? All right, hockey pads.
Hockey pads and Pop Oppenheimer.
Barbie.